An alien-human hybrid is on the loose in Los Angeles, where she's desperately looking for a mate. Listen as we chat about our favorite movies of 2024, asking a date to join you in the shower, and wildly inconsistent psychic powers. Then we find out if 1995's Species stands a test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator with the glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me is my favorite half-human, half-alien, James Brief.
Hi, everyone. I usually don't start the podcast laughing, but that was very good. Yes, I'm James Brief. This is going to be fun. We're going to talk about Species today.
Yeah, but we're into 2025, and we'll get around to doing our box office predictions next week or a week after that. But I was thinking for now, maybe we could talk about our favorite movies that we saw last year, as in movies that came out last year, because obviously we talk about movies every week on the podcast. But I was looking back at my AMC history. I saw a lot of movies in the theater in 2024. I could even just give you like my top three. Real quick, we won't do like a long review. My favorite movie, well, actually, you know what? I'll go backwards. Third, I would put it as a tie between Wicked and Inside Out 2. I thought they were fantastic, really, really well done movies. Emotional. Wicked felt really timely watching it in November 2024, even though it's based on a musical that's 20 years old and a book that was, I think, from the 80s or 90s, which is itself based on The Wizard of Oz, which came out, at the turn of the century. Felt very, very timely. I won't say more than that. If you see the movie, you'll know exactly what I mean. Also, we saw The Substance. Did you hear about that one? The Demi Moore movie? It was like kind of a body horror movie.
No, I knew she was in a film, but no, I didn't see that.
It was really weird and like fucking weird. Like crazy shit happens in that movie. And I loved the first, I don't know, maybe 2/3 or so. The end a little bit goes off the rails, but Courtney and I could not stop talking about it. Like, it still comes up in conversation. Like, you know what the other thing about that movie was? And I think that's a sign of a good movie, right? Like, if it just kind of stays in your head and you can't stop thinking about it and you can't stop talking about it, that's always a plus.
Absolutely. What was your favorite film of 2024?
Hands down, no question, A Real Pain. It was written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg, and he co-stars in it with Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin, I loved in Succession. Jesse Eisenberg, I've never been a huge fan of his, but I think I am now because his acting in that movie was amazing. And, he wrote and directed it. It's about these two cousins who are the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. It's a movie about generational trauma. It's tough in a lot of ways, like you have to be in the right mindset for a movie like that. It's also pretty goddamn funny in a lot of parts, which you might not think based on that description, but it is moving and beautiful and messy and wonderful. Like, I love, love, love that movie. I cannot say enough good things. James, I would highly recommend it to you as a Jew, but also to any listeners who are not Jewish. I still think it is worth watching. Definitely check out A Real Pain. But what about you, James? What were some of your favorite movies of 2024?
Well, to be honest, I don't see as many movies in the theater like you do.
Okay.
I'll see spectacle movies that you really want to see in the movies, but otherwise I figure, I'll just wait like 3 weeks or something and I could see it at home or, 2 months and it's on any random streaming service I already have. But I did see a couple big movies. I saw Deadpool and Wolverine, which I really liked. I enjoyed that. That was very fun.
Yeah.
And I saw, I'm going to pronounce this the correct way, Gladiator 2.
Nope, that was a wrong.
Well, I enjoyed it. I think that the film was unnecessary but enjoyable.
Yeah, I would agree with that take.
But I did see a lot of the films that came out eventually on streaming. I saw Alien Romulus, which I was looking forward to because people were saying it was a new take on Alien, and I did enjoy it. I generally enjoy those films, except for the third and fourth ones. I happened to see Godzilla vs. Kong on an airplane. It passed the time, sure.
Rave review. But let's get into Species. You mentioned that you really liked Alien Romulus, and this movie, Species, is kind of like, what if the xenomorphs from Aliens fucked? Like, that's pretty much Species in a nutshell. But James, why don't you tell our listeners what the movie's about for anyone who hasn't seen it?
I mean, you basically explained it. This movie, Species, this is a movie that revolves around Syl, a genetically engineered hybrid of human and alien DNA who escapes from a government laboratory. And Syl, she rapidly evolves from a child into a deadly and seductive adult. Meanwhile, a team of experts, including anthropologist Stephen Arden, biologist Laura Baker, empath Dan Smithson, and mercenary Preston Lennox, they're assembled to track her down before she can reproduce. Syl finds several potential partners, but the first isn't up to her standards, and she's interrupted before she can have sex with the second. She fakes her own death, seduces Dr. Arden, and then conceives a baby. Then the rest of the team has to hunt her down in order to save humanity.
So I don't need to ask you if this was a hit, because I remember that it was at least a modest enough hit for one theatrical sequel and a couple direct-to-video sequels.
That's absolutely right. This movie came out on July 7th, 1995, with a budget of $35 million. I've got to imagine most of that budget was the H.R. Geiger special effects and that stuff. But it opened at number 2 with $17.1 million. And it wound up with $60 million domestically and $113 million worldwide. So this is the kind of thing that is probably sells well to the HBO because it's got nudity. That's what this film was absolutely sold on. It stars this beautiful actress, Natasha Henstridge. It's got action, it's got boobs, and it made a lot of money.
Right. And there was one thing that you said in the synopsis, which is maybe wrong, maybe it's not wrong, it's debatable, but it's worth unpacking, which is that she starts off as a child and then she becomes an adult. Dan, the Forrest Whitaker character, he talks about how they don't find Syl when she takes the train to LA because in Union Station, they're looking for blonde girls. And this is LA, so lots of blondes everywhere. But no, she's not a child anymore because she has metamorphosized into an adult. But then Dan says, no, she's still a child. And he's got a point there. Because of this whole advanced aging thing, she has been alive for weeks, months, I forget exactly how long, but she is still new to being alive. She is, for all intents and purposes, a child. And obviously she is played by Natasha Henstridge, who was young when she filmed this movie. I think she was 19, 20, but an adult. So it's not creepy that you're watching her have sex. But I kind of felt like it was still creepy, just because they make it a point to say, no, she is still a child. It doesn't sit right with me. There are two separate but related big picture societal problems. Sorry, I'm going to get on my high horse here, but the sexualization of girls and the infantilization of women. And it's not like the movie Species invented this shit. I realize that, but it's part of the problem. That young girls are sexualized at a very young age, that women are made to look like young girls in a sexual context. It's all creepy as fuck. And this movie plays into that. And definitely, when I watched this movie in the mid-90s, as a horny teenager, I was not thinking about any of that. I was thinking Natasha Henstridge is beautiful and I like looking at her boobs. But watching the movie now at 45, I couldn't help think about that. I found it off-putting. Did that bother you at all?
I had absolutely the same reaction when I was 15 years old and I saw her. I think I saw this movie in the theater, actually. I may have seen this with my friends. But I have to say, no, I really did not find any of those undertones.
They don't have to have all of that stuff in here. If you still want to have young Michelle Williams play young Syl, cool. If you still want to do the metamorphosis on the train, awesome. Just don't do that advanced aging thing. Text on screen 20 years later. We lost her on the train. She was in LA. We lost her for 20 years. And now she's back on the map because blah, 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 blah. I mean, there's also the, what I would call plot holes of she's this person who doesn't know how to be in society. And then like a day later, she knows how to fake her own death. She knows how to drive a car. She knows how to fill up gas canisters. And she knows that that power station is flammable. Like, this is pretty intricate stuff that she would not know if she's 2 days old.
I'm not sure about every single one about what you said, but she learned a lot of what she did by watching television. I noticed that the television commercials said things like change your hair color and do this, and she watched explosions.
It's still a lot to learn in 2 days. Also, if you're like me and you think that Syl is a child, then it's creepy that the end of the movie is child murder. Also, she has a kid, which means that the climax of the movie is the murder of 2 children, which I also just find unsettling and unnecessary.
I mean, I think essentially what you're talking about here, if we can flash back to a very, very early movie in the podcast, we reviewed a classic film, the Tom Hanks Penny Marshall, I think, movie Big, where Tom Hanks, while he's in his mid-20s, he's essentially a 12-year-old boy. He has the mind of a 12-year-old boy and all the thoughts of a 12-year-old boy. All he wants is toys and candy and, trampolines and no parents and no bedtime. And then he has sex with a woman, and age appropriate for Tom Hanks. This is I think it's Elizabeth Perkins. There was an absolute debate, and we had it at the time. The movie creators made a choice to have this character have sex, But it is weird that we're in this thought process, and we were thinking that. And I get that you are now thinking the same thing. You're thinking, while this is an adult body, is this maybe not mature enough to have sex? I get it. While it certainly creeped me out in Big, because it clearly established in Big that this is the mind of a 12-year-old boy here. In this film, I get what you're seeing. I do get it, but I just didn't see it that way.
They also could have avoided the whole thing by just not having that line. When they say, oh, they didn't find her in Union Station because they were looking for a girl and she's an adult, then they could have just said, yeah, you're right. She is a fully mature adult now. This insect is a fully mature adult after 10 days, and that's what happened with Syl. Boom, done. Or you don't even have to say that line at all, because we see her as an adult, and we would assume that she is now an adult. Forest Whitaker's character does not have to say, oh, yes, she is a child. Honestly, if that line wasn't in this movie, I bet I never would have thought of any of this shit. It's only because he explicitly says that I was like, ooh.
I totally understand that. I like the care that this film took in creating the villain. This film is based on an absolute real science occurrence that happened in the 70s. The famous Carl Sagan, led by a couple other people at NASA, and SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, they sent out a message. It shows a picture of the telescope that beamed out this message, and sort of the map of where Earth is. And here's a little picture of a double helix. We know what this means. And we sent that out to space. So I really like that this movie is based on the Arecibo space interstellar message, that these aliens caught it. And they include a really cool line that they did not have to include. Basically, the plot of this film could have been, they sent us a message and we made their formula, and it was an alien species that killed us all. But they said they sent us a first message that gave us a real clean methane, like free energy formula.
Limitless.
Limitless energy. And I'm like, that's awesome. I mean, that's great. That's a really cool line.
That line caught my ear as well. But I was then thinking, so maybe this message really was benevolent. Maybe this alien species was trying to help us by sending this DNA. Because what Ben Kingsley's character says is that they figured with that methane thing that these guys are nice aliens, they want to be helpful. So then they splice the alien DNA with human DNA per the instructions. And then she grew really fast. One night she had a nightmare, and so then they decided to kill her, which seems pretty fucking harsh to me. And then they cyanide gas her, which she escapes. She runs by guys who are wearing gas masks who collapse, which I didn't understand. Like, I get it, she's an alien and has superpowers, but the guys who are wearing gas masks should be fine. Whatever, that's not important. But like, okay, maybe she becomes violent because she has been threatened. And they say that, you know, she kills when she's threatened. So maybe this whole murdering thing, that's on us. Oh, and also at the very end of the movie, Dr. Laura says it was half human and half alien. I wonder which half was predatory. And then Preston says the dead half. Haha, that's terrible. Whatever. But I was like, maybe the human part is what made her so violent. And you bring up these big picture questions, and yeah, that's interesting. The movie doesn't really go there. Actually, Dr. Laura has one other line where she says, maybe the aliens consider humanity a weed spreading through space, and Scylla's the virus that's going to eliminate humanity. And because that's the only line about the aliens' motives, I think you're maybe supposed to take that as true, even though she's just hypothesizing. But that doesn't make any fucking sense, because we're not colonizing space. We barely go anywhere. Why would the aliens think that we're a threat to species everywhere? That doesn't make any sense. And I did read something where the screenwriter was saying that he was interested in this kind of stuff, the big existential questions, and he wanted to explore it more. And I was like, well, you were the fucking screenwriter, so write it. But apparently this movie had 8 different drafts and went through a lot of rewrites. So maybe some of that stuff just ended up on the cutting room floor.
I mean, you're right. They hint at it. You could have had a scene where Dr. Baker's talking to Syl about this and just talking about Syl saying, I've done nothing wrong. You could have had a conversation that would really change this film and elevate it. I kind of thought of it as mostly just a slasher alien film, but it really isn't. She really does nothing wrong now that I think about it.
Right. And this movie does sort of have an element of consensual sex. That first guy that she picks up at the club, who the bouncer says is not an asshole, by the way. And, at first he seems gentlemanly enough, where he's like, hey, welcome back to my house. Do you want to take a shower? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, I do. If you want to, you can. Feel free to join me. Whatever.
What a weird move, though. That is so fucking weird. Now, inviting her to the shower, okay, I guess he's just going for it. Like, maybe she says yeah, and she throws her clothes off and they go in the shower. But when she says no, I'll just say, I've never pulled that move on a woman that's never been in my apartment before, to say, hi, come over, I'm going to go in the shower. Wow.
Sure, but she wants to have sex with him. But then she changes her mind and says, drive me home. And then he says, no. And very quickly, the scene changes and she kills him, and you don't feel bad for him because, fuck that guy. Later, she's probably going to have consensual sex, but then, she's interrupted by the whole team. So then she kills him. Not cool.
It's more than consensual sex. She straight up tells him, and yes, freaks him the fuck out, but she straight up tells him, I want a baby. And he's like, whoa, and jumps out of the hot tub like most people would do on a first date. Not even date. This isn't a date. This is he brought a woman home from the hospital, I think.
Yes.
So that sucked for him.
It's consensual with Dr. Arden, the Alfred Molina character.
Well, it's consensual consensual in a way, but you could argue he definitely wanted to have sex with this woman, but this doctor did not want to have sex with Syl. She knew he didn't want to have sex with Syl, so therefore she made herself anything but Syl. So
Okay,
in a
that's
way,
fair.
she had to trick him to have sex with him. So she broke her own little rule there.
Fair. But also in that scene, she's on top. And as anyone who has tried to conceive will tell you, that is not the position if you're trying to conceive because of this thing called gravity. And, Alfred Molina is great in this movie. Ben Kingsley is terrible in this movie. He is awful. This is 2 years after Schindler's List. Okay? And now he is in this fucking schlock. And he is not happy to be there. He does not want to be in this movie. When you see him in the Marvel movies, Ben Kingsley is having a good fucking time. He's playing a silly character and he's happy to be there and he is reveling in it. And good for him. You can be in serious drama and superhero movies and sci-fi movies and whatever the fuck you want. But his character is also just poorly written. He doesn't do anything. He's kind of an asshole, but not like an interesting asshole where he's the evil mastermind of this government project and he tells you things, but you don't really like him because there's something sinister going on. He's just like a prick. He's like a shitty boss. When they get to LA and they're saying like, well, LA is a city of the future and everyone's a stranger here, which I don't really think is LA's reputation, but whatever. His response, what he says is, yeah, well, whatever. So, and then he walks away. He sounds like a fucking teenage girl, like bitching about something. Like, what the fuck, dude?
I disagree that his acting is terrible. I would say he's phoning it in. That's more what I would say this is. It's funny you mention his acting in the Marvel films because my girlfriend and I are watching we're watching the MCU in order, and we just got to Iron Man 3, and he goes, from the evil Mandarin to Trevor, the drinking actor. And that's something that actors crave. I mean, this multiple personality stuff. This film is not Ben Kingsley's best acting. No. It's a paycheck, but I don't think it's bad acting. But I do agree with you that his character it's not interesting enough because when he tries to gas her in the beginning, he feels very bad about it, but there wasn't a big enough reason. I would have liked there to be something like to kill a child. Like he had to say like, look, I had to do the worst thing possible a human could do, but I knew for a fact she would have killed us all. They never give us that. It's more like she had a bad dream. So the decision was made to kill her and I felt bad about it. So I said yes.
But like he says it very matter-of-factly, I felt bad.
That's fine that he would, but they should have at least explained, this is not Alien Resurrection, where by the fourth Alien film, we are very well aware of what kind of alien we are trying to build in a scientific lab, knowing it could kill us all, which is why we're going to build it on a remote space station. No, this is something they don't really know that this child's going to kill them. So you're right. Ben Kingsley is, I don't think it's his fault. I think it's the screenplay's fault, that it's not interesting enough.
He talks about following protocol. He says that he was following protocol when he gassed Syl. He also says that when they do the experiment with the raw alien DNA and it's just growing in the lab and he's going to kill Preston and Dr. Laura because that's protocol. And then they finally are able to bust out of the room and they are not mad at him at all. He's like, I was just following protocol. And they're like, okay. I was expecting Michael Madsen to like deck him, be like, you fucking prick. No, he doesn't say anything. Also, when he tells them there are aliens are real, they sent us DNA and we spliced it into a person, there's no reaction by anyone in the room. They're all just like, oh, neat.
That's very true. That scene where they don't let him out, I was flabbergasted by it as well, because at no point did they establish that there is a biohazard in there.
Right.
If there is some kind of Ebola virus, I get it. If there's a contaminant, you don't let them out. there's no reason for Ben Kingsley to say, I have to burn the entire lab. And before they go in there, they should probably be warned, just so you know, you step on a nail, you rip this suit, we're burning the whole place and you die. Michael Madsen's also not a bioscientist. He's not a scientist. He's not a biologist. He's not the kind of person that goes into biohazard suits all the time. So, good point.
I also wanted to take a minute to talk about Dan, the Forrest Whitaker character. So he is an empath, and the way that they describe what an empath is accurate, where they say that he feels things very deeply, he can feel other people's emotions. That is what an empath is in real life. That is a real thing. However, then they also just kind of make him a psychic, where he knows things that an empath wouldn't know. And look, if you want to have a psychic in your movie about an alien that fucks, cool, neat, have fun, whatever. But then call him a fucking psychic. Don't call him an empath. Also, his powers are wildly, wildly inconsistent. They walk into the train car. There's a cocoon on the wall. There's a dead woman lying on the floor. And Dan, the psychic / empath, says, something bad happened here. Oh, really? Thanks. So glad we got you on the team. When they're watching the VHS tape of little baby Syl, and he says, oh, she doesn't like being locked up in that cage. Yeah, no shit. Like the car that they know that she was in is abandoned. And then he says, she must have walked. Well, yeah, she fucking abandoned the car. She probably didn't get in a helicopter. Of course she walked. But then he also knows which way she walked. I mean, an empath wouldn't know that. A psychic would know that. His character I found to be endlessly frustrating just because what he could do literally just varied scene to scene.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of those kind of things that could have been done by the Michael Madsen character. All you need is a quote unquote tracker. And that is the Michael Madsen character. He could basically look after the car. I never know how these things work, but I'm the kind of movie audience viewer where if a character looks at a twig that a leaf is bent in a certain way and they go, he went that way, I go, okay, you don't need the empath saying that. That's a very good point. I just didn't think, they needed an empath in there. I thought it was a weird character.
It is a very weird character. One last weird character thing. Michael Madsen plays Preston Lennox, and they call him Press. And that's fucking weird. I completely forgot what his character's name was. And then, halfway through the movie, they just kept saying, Press, Press. And I'm like, why are they saying Press? Push, pull, what? I don't know if Press is a nickname for Preston, but call him by his last name, Lennox. That's way fucking cooler. But anyway, James, let me ask you what you think about Species overall. Do you think the movie stands the test of time?
I actually thought that this movie was going to be horrible. It's not a horrible film. It's got a lot of things going for it. For one thing, it's got the acting. Ben Kingsley's fine. He phones it in. But Natasha Henstridge, I think this is one of her first films. I think she's good in the film. Her very first film. I think she's good in the film. Alfred Molina is always good and everything. The score is pretty good. H.R. Geiger, he did the alien special effects. He did the special effects in this film. I think they're very good. Kind of her spikes that come out. I think it's kind of a scary alien. It's well done. It would have been much easier, and the budget would have been going down a lot if they just did this all in CGI. But they couldn't in '95. So I think it's to their credit they did that. The point that you bring up, that this poor woman, yeah, they touch on it and there's a little sympathy to her, but I really think that should be the point of the film. I think it should be kind of we're hunting her and maybe give us a reason that it's a very sad thing, but we do have to kill her because, yeah, she will kind of destroy humanity. The only way for her to reproduce is for us to end, something like that. But I was kind of rooting against her because, she's killing a lot of people, and I even think throwing in the first guy being a rapist was unnecessary because that did give a reason. Oh, good, you killed him. Like, yeah, a lot of the other guys did deserve to be killed. An overall problem with this film is that, this beautiful woman all she has to do is really go on one date and, don't just go to a bar. She could probably go to like a hotel lounge or go to like a bookstore. And especially when you look like that, just wait. You will find someone probably, if we're gonna go there and think about this, Natasha Hedges does not need to wait long to mate.
Sure.
It's kind of a problem with the film because she needs to find consensual people and, maybe don't mention I want a baby immediately. But even then, I still think she'll find plenty of consensual men who will have, unprotected sex with her.
Probably.
So the problem was I actually just kind of got bored with this film in the third act.
Oh, yeah.
The third act of the film is just a generic action film. There's a one-liner at the end and there's an right? It's an explosion. Yeah. There's the little call to the possible sequel, which is fine. While there was probably too much nudity, you didn't need that much. I thought the nudity was mostly, quote unquote, tasteful. I mean, it was kind of just showing her in the hot tub for a bit and, kind of her on top of a man. It wasn't super gratuitous. They didn't have her like in a bathroom, like she's a woman discovering that she's now an adult. Let me go in a bathroom and just look at my body. It didn't have that scene, which a lesser film would. However, the thing that really bothers me in the end is it just wasn't a really good film, especially the last third. I thought it had an intriguing premise, but it didn't do enough. It's not a terrible film. It's just not a good film. So it does not stand the test of time. I'm going to guess that you are not going to be as polite to this film. But what do you think, Al? Does Species stand the test of time?
I had a lot of problems watching this movie now that I didn't have when I was a kid. I watched this movie as a horny teen boy and fucking loved it because there's a gorgeous naked woman who has sex in it. So I was a huge fan of this movie in the mid-90s. Now, though, it does read really different and problematic for me. Also, just to be totally clear, if none of the shit that bothers me bothers you, that's cool. I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade. That's fine. This is stuff that I noticed and it bothers me, but if you're able to look past that, that's great. And I, in a way, like, I'm a little jealous that you can enjoy it on that level and not have this shit bother you. But I couldn't help but think that this movie should be really sex positive, that, hey, this woman's just trying to get out there and get laid, man, like, go get it, girl. But it also feels like anti-woman because she is a sexual creature, emphasis on the creature part, and so that's monstrous and evil and needs to be destroyed. Like there's that thing in horror movies where the virgin lives and the girl who has sex is brutally murdered.
You're right. You make a good point. This is kind of that old trope.
Yeah, and like it feels really icky because of that, and the whole aging thing is just unnecessary. You don't need it. Also, at the end, when they kill the baby, they kill the alien version of the baby, not the adorable version of the toddler, which of course makes sense. No one's going to want to see a toddler get murdered. But it is weird when you think about it. Sil is half human, half alien. She has sex with Alfred Molina, who's full human, so the alien DNA in the baby would be further diluted. So how come he's evolving and metamorphosizing way faster than Sil ever did? That doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's just icky that they fucking kill a kid. I don't like that. Yes, I get it that it's a creature. The H.R. Geiger design is cool, I guess, but like, I don't know, man. The nipples are too much. They are just too big and too prominent in every shot.
That's fair.
It almost just felt like some really bizarre, creepy porn. I didn't care for it. I 1,000% agree with you about the third act where everything falls apart. Once it just goes into generic action movie mode, I lost all interest. They go into this basement of the hotel, which has tar pits or something. Like, what the fuck? The special effects are awful. There's like weird early CGI mixed with some stop motion. I thought it all looked like shit. I didn't like the end. I really kind of didn't like most of it because of all of these problems. So no, I am going to say that this movie does not stand the test of time. 15-year-old Alan would be shocked to hear me say this, but no, This movie's pretty bad. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Maltese Falcon. James, you picked this, and I am really excited that you did. I've never seen this movie, and I'm really excited to watch it.
Same here. The Maltese Falcon is one of the most famous films from that golden era of Hollywood that just no one talks about today, and I've always wanted to see it, so let's watch it.
Let's. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test of Time Pod, Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads. Write to us. Let us know your thoughts on Species, on Natasha Henstridge, aliens, mean aliens, killer aliens, aliens that just want to have sex. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you next time, everyone.
Bye.